There's a lovely presence that still accompanies my writing of poetry, especially here in my cottage at Ballindoon, because this person came to me very young. Her name was Yvonne McDonough, and she later married and became Yvonne McDonough Gaffney. So this poem is dedicated to her. She was 12 years old, and she was visiting my caravan and bringing down the tea when I was writing the entire book of Under Stars. And so she rests now in the Ballindoon graveyard, which I can see the top of the abbey from my chair here. So I wrote this for her memorial card. She died very young of a spinal kind of cancer. And she is the niece of Josie Gray, who became my companion. And so she's gotten ever more precious to me. For Yvonne McDonough Gaffney. Swept to her shoulders and out of the house, the boys' sweaters, Granny's cardigan, that way she had as a girl of borrowing until we forgot to own. Now we coax her back like a favorite garment that bears her scent, laughter unraveling like water breeze, pensive as a bride. How can she be so everywhere and gone? Just like her to store up warmth for us, stretching memory like a sleeve until we are reshaped by her absence. Coming upon her boat, marooned there on shore at Lough Arrow, is such wistfulness toward life we know enough to turn it over, climb in, let her hold us across the water. The next poem, Black Silk, is a curious poem about the sense of being embodied by another soul and feeling that presence very strongly, and all occasioned by trying on a piece of clothing from that person, who in this case is my father. Black silk. She was cleaning. There is always that to do when she found at the top of the closet his old silk vest. She called me to look at it, unrolling it carefully like something live might fall out. Then we spread it on the kitchen table and smoothed the wrinkles down, making our hands heavy until its shape against Formica came back, and the little tips that would have pointed to his pockets lay flat. The buttons were all there. I held my arms out, and she looped the wide armholes over them. That's one thing I never wanted to be, she said, a man. I went into the bathroom to see how I looked in the sheen and sadness. Wind chimes off key in the alcove. Then her crying, so I stood back in the sink light where the porcelain had been staring. Time to go to her, I thought, with that other mind, and stood still. This poem is a great favorite of audiences. I think it's great that people like it because it makes us feel warm and reminds us to include people who are at our periphery. There's a kind of a natural goodness, I think, I hope is in the poem. especially in the closing images. It comes from a dream that I had, and Raymond Carver was a great defender of the poem. It was almost left out of My Dear Ghosts, or no, the book before that, I guess. But he said, no, I have to have that poem. Amplitude, we were editing Amplitude. So it's one I like too. The Hug. A woman is reading a poem on the street, and another woman stops to listen. We stop too, with our arms around each other. The poem is being read and listened to out here in the open. Behind us, no one is entering or leaving the houses. Suddenly a hug comes over me, and I'm giving it to you like a variable star shooting light off to make itself comfortable, then subsiding. I finish, but keep on holding you. A man walks up to us, and we know he hasn't come out of nowhere, but if he could, he would have. He looks homeless because of how he needs. Can I have one of those? He asks you, and I feel you nod. I'm surprised you don't tell him how it is, that I'm yours, only yours, etc., exclusive as a nose to its face. Love, that's what we're talking about. Love that nabs you with for me only and holds on. So I walk over to him and put my arms around him and try to hug him like I mean it. He's got an overcoat on so thick I can't feel him past it. I'm starting the hug and thinking, how big a hug is this supposed to be? How long shall I hold this hug? Already we could be eternal. His arms falling over my shoulders, his hands not meeting behind his back. He is so big. I put my head into his chest and snuggle in. I lean into him. I lean my blood and my wishes into him. He stands for it. This is his, and he's starting to give it back so well. I know he's getting it. This hug, so truly, so tenderly. We stop having arms, and I don't know if my lover has walked away or what, or if the woman is still reading the poem, or the houses. What about them? The houses. Clearly, a little permission is a dangerous thing. But when you hug someone, you want it to be a masterpiece of connection. The way the button on his coat will leave the imprint of a planet in my cheek when I walk away, when I try to find some place to go back to. But I've traveled quite a lot, and this poem was inspired by going to Japan and visiting the Silver Pavilion in Kyoto. And this is the first poem in Moon Crossing Bridge, the book I wrote right after the death of Raymond Carver. Yes. Now we are like that flat cone of sand in the garden of the Silver Pavilion in Kyoto, designed to appear only in moonlight. Do you want me to mourn? Do you want me to wear black? Or, like moonlight on whitest sand, to use your dark, to gleam, to shimmer? I gleam. I mourn. This is also in Moon Crossing Bridge. Reading this here in Ireland reminds me that the last time I left Ireland, I left right after a wake, and in our family, we have a similar custom that the deceased one stays in the house, stays with the house for a period before going to the church and to the burial. And it's not a very well-used custom, I understand, from other families I know, but my family comes from rural Oklahoma and Missouri, and so they had kept that custom. And so when my late husband passed away, my mother and I sat with him, and this was during a period when my mother wasn't at the house, and I wrote the poem realizing that it could be a kind of transgressionary poem, but I didn't care. This was really important to the sensations and the feelings that I had at that time. And I was sure that other people had had the same thing happen to them, so I wrote the poem anyway. Wake. 3 nights you lay in our house, 3 nights in the chill of the body. Did I want to prove how surely I'd been left behind? In the room's great dark, I climbed up beside you onto our high bed we'd loved in and slept in, married and unmarried. There was a halo of cold around you, as if the body's messages carry farther in death. My own warmth taking on the silver white of a voice sent unbroken across snow, just to hear itself in its clarity of calling. We were dead a little while together then, serene and afloat on the strange, broad canopy of the abandoned world. This poem is called Choices, and it was written in my sky house where I write on the Olympic Peninsula in the state of Washington. And it deals with our trying to get the best view possible and never always being rather greedy about this. I'm the daughter of a woodsman, and both my parents were loggers. So you would think that I would respect the trees enough and leave them alone at this stage, since they gave me sustenance and food on the table when I was a child. But even I succumbed to wanting to improve things and went out one day and started to get into mischief with a tree. And I like to hope that this poem, if it could only save even one tree, I would be very happy. Called Choices. And it's for Dragos Jambuk. I go to the mountain side of the house to cut saplings and clear a view to snow on the mountain. But when I look up, saw in hand, I see a nest clutched in the uppermost branches. I don't cut that one. I don't cut the others either. Suddenly, in every tree, an unseen nest where a mountain would be. As a child, I spent a lot of time ironing my 3 brothers' clothes. Ironing during the 1950s was a particular art that the women were very good at. Here in Ireland they really enjoy it too, I understand, because when I complain about ironing and how I kind of like wrinkles, then I understand that I'm a foreigner here. I stopped writing the poem to fold the clothes. No matter who lives or who dies, I'm still a woman. I'll always have plenty to do. I bring the arms of his shirt together. Nothing can stop our tenderness. I'll get back to the poem. I'll get back to being a woman. But for now, there's a shirt, a giant shirt in my hands, and somewhere a small girl standing next to her mother, watching to see how it's done. In the poem, it reminds me of how important the companioning of one's mother is. And I enjoyed remembering that companioning with my mother.